the air conditioner, it's hard for someone to know just by looking at a unit whether it's efficient or not and how the whole system of the home works as a system. So for those folks who do make investments in energy efficiency, it's a way for them to take credit for that and expose those investments at time of sale. Next slide. So I'm going to go quickly over what the scoring tool produces. So if you're scoring a home, it'll take you an hour or less to complete. If you're already going through and doing a home inspection, which I imagine is what you guys all do, you're probably collecting a lot of the data points already, so hopefully it won't take you more than maybe another 15 minutes to do, depending on what you already include in your own inspection reports. And what the tool will generate is a standard report. And I'll go through the different pieces of the report. And even though I'm going to talk about this a little later, I should mention that if you're already using a different software tool, you can generate the home energy score through other software tools. Right now, the only inspection software that is directly linked to it is Inspector Pro. So for those of you who are using Inspector Pro, you can generate the score through that tool, and it's still calculating everything the same way. It basically sends the data to us through a web service and then uses our calculation engine to approximate everything that you're getting calculated for the score. There are no reporting requirements. It's free to use. Obviously, it does take your time, but other than your time, there are no fees, obviously imposed by DOE. So if you're looking at this first page of the score report, this house scored a 2, and with improvements that we're recommending, it could get to a 6 and save over $500 a year with those improvements. Next slide. The second part of the score report are really just home facts, and this is just the inputs that you put into the tool, which, as I said, Glenn is going to show you our standard user interface and go through that. But you're basically putting information in about the envelope, so you're the foundation, the roof, the windows, and then levels of insulation, whether or not it's air sealed, whether the ducts are sealed, and then heating, cooling, and hot water. You're not entering information about lights or refrigerators or other appliances in the home. It's just the major appliances that are related to energy, heating, cooling, and hot water. And the thing that's circled there over on the left, which is kind of hard to read because it's small, but this also, basically what you're doing when you input these data points, and you have to input something for each of the points that are required, the scoring tool is running what's called an energy simulation of the house. So it's basically saying, okay, this house that's located at 12345 zip code, in Arizona or whatever it is, if you had a standard family living in that house, and given what the assessor told us about that house, which way it's facing, how many windows it has on each side, etc., what kind of construction, based on that, it's estimating energy that house will use in an average year for that location. So it'll take the weather data that we use from each of the 1,000+ weather stations around the country, and it will basically be running a model of the house saying, okay, over the however many hours there are in a year, how much energy is this house going to use given the different characteristics it has, and assuming a standard family. Okay, next. And the third part of the standard report are the recommendations. So you saw on that first page it said this house could get from a 2 to a 6. Well, that is based on cost-effective recommendations that we are providing here. You can override these recommendations and put in your own, but you're not, we don't want you to show both recommendations. We either use ours or your own. And they're broken out into 2 types of recommendations. The first type are really things that we encourage you to do right away. Usually it's insulation and air sealing and duct sealing. And then we break it out into replace later, which is really what kind of improvements you can make when you're ready to replace whatever heating, cooling, and water heater equipment you have in the house. So if you have, a 20-year-old furnace and you're going to go out and pick one that's Energy Star, how much would you save if you got rid of the one you have now versus one that's Energy Star in the market today. And so in this case, it's telling you that you would save $160. I mean, $106, apologize. So the upgrade score that you saw on the front is assuming you've made all of these improvements. Okay, next page. And Maddie, you can let me know if we get questions that you want to interrupt me on. Now this is
this page and then do that.
Okay, so this label is a little more complicated looking. It's an alternative label that we're probably going to come out with this spring. We have a number of states around the country that are adopting home energy score, and they want to customize it a bit. So for instance, they might put, Arkansas home energy score at the top there and show other metrics that you can generate with the scoring tool, but that are not prominently displayed in our standard report. So you can generate how much, this house is going to cost a year to run versus what it's going to cost if you make the improvements. And you can also show them an estimate of the breakdown in fuel types. So if it's using oil and electricity and propane or whatever, it'll show whatever energy fuel types are used in that house, and it'll show you in the gray what it's expected to use now under the current conditions and what it would use with the improvements. Okay, and there's obviously a space for a logo there on the bottom. I showed the ASHI and InterNACHI logos there, so that's something you could use should you care to do that with your report. Okay, next slide.
Well, I'll take over for a few minutes and answer a couple of questions and let you have a breather.
Okay.
So the first question is about BPI certification as compared to home energy score. Home energy score doesn't require any of the diagnostics or safety testing, so this is not necessarily equivalent, and certainly home energy score is not an energy audit. It does not provide a scope of work, so it's not really comparable to the building analyst certification. So we can certainly fill in some of the blanks if you've got more questions.
Did they ask about the certification, or did they ask about assessment that's done that way?
They were asking whether this is a replacement for the BPI certification.
Okay, so yeah, we're going to get into which certifications we accept later in the presentation, but that is one of many that we would recognize.
Question about my clients have already secured a loan, so how do they take advantage of this after I've performed an inspection? If you, we're going to get into financing a little later into the presentation as well. Let's see. It cannot be applied to multi-properties. This is for single-family homes and townhomes or duplexes. The program is sponsored by the U.S. DOE. Let's see. You do have to be certified or qualified as a home energy score assessor. Again, we're going to get into what it takes to do that. There's a question about whether appliances are included in the rating. They are not. We're looking strictly at the primary portions of the house, and again, during the demo, we'll show you what that is. The webinar is being recorded, and we'll give you the link to it once it's posted.
It takes about a week to post it. Sorry.
And we do provide some backup documentation that you can provide to your client. When we're all done with this, too, is we will download and answer each one of these questions individually and provide those answers to you. So if I miss one or two along the way, we will get those answers to you in a written format. Okay, Joan, back to you.
Great, thank you. Okay, so so the way we implement the program with partners and assessors around the country is that DOE works directly with partner organizations. They can be utilities, they can be state or local governments. As I mentioned, there are a number of states that are adopting the score, or they can be associations. So we're excited to have InterNACHI and ASHI, or ASHI, both be new, or not so new, some of them, national partners and we're still working out exactly what that means in terms of implementation with those two organizations, but I'll talk to you a little bit about what we see moving forward. So if you decide you want to be a home energy score assessor, given that you're all spread around the country, you probably wouldn't be, doing it through your local utility. You'd probably be doing it under ASHI or InterNACHI, or the other national organization that's out there that is a national partner is BPI, the Building Performance Institute. So we work directly with the partner, and then the partners work directly with all of you who become qualified assessors. We have minimum requirements for the assessors, and I'll go through that, but each partner, they may or may not impose additional requirements. We don't get into that, and so you would have to talk to the partner that you're working under, or that you're being an assessor under, to find out if they had any other requirements. And basically the assessors, even though they're working under a partner agreement, you're pretty much out there doing your assessments on your own and your scores on your own, just as you would your inspection business. So you just add this on to the inspections you're doing. There are some requirements for mentoring and quality assurance, which I'll get into later. But you're the one obviously working directly with the homeowner or the home buyer. Okay, next. We do have partners around the country. I already mentioned the 3 that are partners that have national coverage, but you'll see that we do have quite a few. Again, it's a mix of states and nonprofits and utilities. Utilities have been the most active so far because they're the ones that are already out in people's houses, either doing quick energy assessments or checkups, or they're going in to verify that somebody put in a piece of equipment and that they got a rebate for, so they're doing it as part of that. Okay, next. And just quickly, kind of highlights, as I mentioned, we did a lot of testing, and we actually scored houses before 2012, our partners did, but those were not official scores. Since 2012, our partners have scored about 36,000, and it's pretty easy to do. Once you learn how to do it, I think it can be something you do pretty quickly. We do have supplemental information that you can provide the homeowner to, go into more depth if you don't have time for that. If they have specific questions about, what does it mean? How does it, what does it mean that I'm a 4 versus an 8 or whatever? And obviously some of those things you'll learn when you take our training, but if you want to leave behind additional material, we do make that available to you that you can, customize should you like. We do have one city in the country, and there's others that I believe are going to follow suit soon. That are requiring that the home energy score be used at time of sale as part of their disclosure policies. And we are working closely through something we call the Home Energy Information Accelerator, which I also manage at DOE. We're working with real estate interests like the National Association of Realtors, the Council of MLSs, RESO, which is the Real Estate Standards Organizations, groups like that. We're working to try to facilitate and expedite the flow of information from these different programs and from folks like you who would be scoring homes, getting that information into the MLS. So I realize the timing might be a little off unless you're doing it for a seller. If you're doing this for a buyer, obviously they wouldn't be putting it on the MLS at that time, but basically if you go in and you score a house, we have all the data that you've put into the house. We don't collect any information about your clients or their names or any of that stuff, but the information that Glenn will show you that we do collect about the address and then the characteristics, that stays in our system, and so it could conceivably be downloaded if that was made public at some point. We're not going to be doing that, but for instance, you can always go in and get all of the scores that you did in the past should you need to. Okay, next. And the partners can get all the scores done by all the assessors under their partnership. So you guys had asked, somebody had asked a question about the 2% or the financing incentives. And right now, there are a couple incentives. One is just for Colorado. They have some incentives at point of sale where they offer a $750 incentive for every jump you go up on the scale, up to 4 jumps. So if you start at a 3 and you get to a 7, you can qualify for $3,000, and that's the max. But you're right that we have not quite figured out the timing on this, and we're working with FHA. It just became effective in January of this year, this new policy, and we're trying to figure out how lenders are going to kind of promote the use of this, set themselves apart from other lenders, showing that this is something that they're willing to do to attract additional clients. And so the way the 2% stretch works is that, let's say I can qualify for the qualifying ratio that FHA allows is 35% debt to income. But if I'm going and buying a house that is a 6 or better, I would actually bump up to a 37% debt to income ratio. So I could have a higher amount of debt compared to my income, and therefore I might qualify for a larger loan or a larger, a different house than I typically would have. And it can actually be pretty substantial. Like the one example they showed us was somebody was qualifying for like a $75,000 house, and with the 2% stretch, it actually got them to $100,000. So it's more than I actually expected it would be, given that it doesn't sound that exciting, 2%. But I do believe we're going to move forward and really make this an important part of transactions, and it's going to take a little while, but I do think the intent is to try to get lenders to use this and to try out other things that revolve around using the score and tying it to either giving people credit for a house that's more efficient, or also allowing them to use money to make the house more efficient. So in the case of FHA, it can either be a house that already qualifies as a 6 or higher, or if the borrower says they're going to demonstrate that they're going to be taking action to make the improvements to get it to a 6 or higher, because we've shown that you can do that, then they could also qualify for the 2% stretch. But you're right, you raise a very good point, whoever did raise that, and that's something that I hope we will have some guidance on in the next couple of months. Okay, next, I think this might be, oh no, I think, okay, so a couple more slides from me and then we'll move on to some demos. So the assessor requirements, if you choose to become an assessor, basically somebody had already asked about credentialing. We recognize a whole wide range of credentials, including those offered by ASHI and InterNACHI. So you can look on our website or just talk to them. Actually, I think the next slide actually shows some of them. But if you don't have one of those credentials that we list, you can contact us and see if you're part of another organization that we would recognize. Basically, we want people who understand homes. You don't have to be a building scientist. You don't have to be an energy auditor, but you do need to know how to walk through a house, collect data based on the way we want you to collect it, because it's not that we think our way is better than somebody else's way. It's just that everyone has to collect it the same way in order to get a consistent response out of the, it's kind of like saying if when you go and test a car and get a miles per gallon sticker, they're all supposed to be using the same test procedure, and that's pretty much what we want, is that people collect the data in a consistent way so that if I go into a house and score it and Glenn goes into a house and scores it, we get generally the same answer. In addition to showing that you have a credential and showing that to your partner organization, you don't send it to us, you then have to take an online practical test, and Glenn is going to go through the training for that. It is a little tricky, and it does take some time to get through it because you have to do the training and then the test. Typically, it takes people about 12 hours. You can do it at home. It's online. It's in your own time. Obviously, that is your time, and I'm sure you have a lot of things to do with it. But again, given that this is a tool that we want to be consistently used, we are asking folks to go through that training. And some organizations might offer additional training to help you get through it. That's up to them. There's also a short online multiple choice test that's part of that. It's just 20 questions that cover information about the home energy score. If you read the materials, you should be able to pass that. And then there's a quality assurance and mentoring requirement. So the first home that you go and score, you're required to go through with a mentor. And we've defined a mentor to be somebody who's scored, I believe, at least 25 homes. And then the requirement to date has been, like for utilities, has been that 5% of all the homes that they score, they have to rescore with another person, like somebody else goes through it. We recognize that's going to be hard to do with home inspectors because you're basically going in, you're getting, access to a house through a realtor or whatever way you've arranged to be in the house. It's going to be tricky to then have somebody else come later. So what we're trying to do is move more towards a mentoring approach only, which would basically be our quality assurance, and also a lot more review of the data electronically. And we're figuring that out, but for now we're pilot testing something with InterNACHI and ASHI that would basically be DOE would go out and train some members of those associations. So Glenn's already set up to go and train, I think, the board members at ASHI, and we're working with InterNACHI to get that set up. And then those members would serve as mentors, and then you would work out locally how you would, if you would pay the mentor or, that's not something DOE would get involved in, but you could basically, we're going to move towards like 2%. So every time you get to 50 homes, you'd have to have the mentor go through it with you again. And the idea is that you would discuss it, you would score them independently, but then you'd be going through it at the same time, just doing it separately, then talk through it at the end and say, oh, wow, my square footage was completely different than yours. Why is that the case? And then you'd discuss it and figure out what was, it could be that the assessor got it right and the mentor got it wrong. It doesn't really matter. The thing that matters is that you're learning and doing things consistently through this kind of interaction and ongoing discussion. So that's how we're trying to move forward with inspectors. We realize it's different than utilities who do have the resources in-house to do the QA. So we're moving towards a different philosophy there. Okay, next slide. This is just a quick slide, I think, showing you which types of credentials we currently recognize. That's not to say this is an exclusive list. There are other ones that we would recognize. But in addition to the credential, as I said, whoever you decide to work with as your partner organization, they may have other requirements and you'd have to check with them. I think this is when I turn it over to Glenn, who's going to run through the training testing platform and then do a demo of the scoring tool. And hopefully it'll go quickly. Last time it was a little bit bumpy because of we have too many systems running at the same time. It's hard to make it work through the webinar.
Okay, I'm going to move through this fairly quickly, but what I want to do is just give you a brief view of what the training tool looks like. So this is free to all assessors. There are a bunch of questions about what the assessor, initial qualification is. That list that Joan showed on the previous slide should answer most of those questions. As long as you have one of those initial certifications, then you are eligible to become a candidate for the home energy score. The training is this is sort of the landing page. This is where you start. The first thing you should do is work through this simulation user's manual. It will provide you with a lot of very useful and important information that you need to know in order to work through the sim. If you skip this step, you're going to make your life harder. The sim itself is it's very much like a gaming sort of interface. You actually move through the house. We've got the clipboard here mimics the home energy scoring tool data entry. You'll see that entry in just a few minutes. We have a footprint so that you can see things like the number of bedrooms, and you can apply the dimensions to the house to come up with the square footages. We have a toolbox where we have our tape measure for getting those dimensions. We've got a ruler for measuring the depth of the insulation. We've got a lighter for determining the number of panes of glass, a compass for the orientation of the house. We've got a stud finder for determining the spacing between the studs, and we've got a low E coding meter for determining that on the house as well. you don't have, you can use the cursor keys to move through the house, but we also have what we call these teleport buttons that get you to where you need much more quickly. So, for example, when you want to collect the information about the attic, we'll jump up there, and as you can see, we have an insulated space here, and we have an uninsulated hatch, and we're going to measure the insulation depth, and we can see that that's 8 inches, and we know that that being cellulose, that's going to work out to about an R24, and we would open this up, and we would go to our attic, and we would characterize our attic space. And I'm not going to go through all of these. I just want to show you a general idea. And there's no insulation on the roof here, so you can see the sheeting on the underside of the roof. So there's no insulation there. Let's make a quick trip out to the roof to see what color it is. So it's kind of a medium color. But here we're going to characterize the insulation. So we've got an unconditioned attic, and our insulation is R24, so we're going to choose R25. If it were not well installed, we do a D-rate on it. We're going to explain to you in the training how to do that. You're going to work through calculator to figure that out. Down in this house in the crawl space, we have a natural draft furnace. You're going to gather the information off of the boilerplate here and determine the efficiency. And again, you're going to open up your clipboard, and we provide you the calculator so that you can come up with all of these numbers. And go down here, and you're going to characterize that it's a gas furnace, and you're going to define the efficiencies based on the information that we provide. And then the last thing.
Glenn's going through it really fast, and obviously the training wouldn't be this fast. He's just giving you a quick exposure to the tool.
Yeah, as Joan indicated, it could take as much as 12 hours. You do need to sit down and focus with it. You can't just spend a half an hour with it and kind of walk away and come back. And you do need to schedule some time, allot some time to do it effectively. And we're going to pull our tape measure out right quick, and you can see that we've got the dimensions of the house here, and we can go to the back, and we'll get the dimensions back here as well, and we'll use those again to complete the information here. So we've got some things that you can't get from the house are included in the comments here. You just drop them into here, but you'd apply, after calculating your square footage, you'd enter that there. So that's just a very, very, very quick demonstration of how the training works. You go through a couple of houses to 3 houses to sort of learn the differences, how all of this applies. After each one, you're going to end the sim, and it will give you a report card to tell you how you did. There you go. And I'll show you that real quick if I can find it.
And there's a lot of written resources here, and there's some guided ways to go through the tool at first too, if you want to. I've forgotten what that part's called, but so obviously you won't have Glenn taking you through it all, but there is a fair amount of guidance in there should you use it, which we recommend you do.
Again, if you follow the information that we provide to you in the email that enrolls you, you will be well served. And then the report, obviously I didn't do well because I didn't fill most of this information out, but it then tells you what the correct answer is, what your answer was, and gives you a final score at the bottom. During the training scenarios, you need to do at least an 80. During the test, you need to make a 90. So that is the sim. Maddie, I think the next slide, I can't see it, is for the API, is that right?
Yeah, it's for the API.
So while I get this set up, I'll talk about that. So software, the third-party software providers can access Home Energy Score through the sort of the back end, what we call an API. Home Inspector Pro has done this, so if you use their software, you don't have to do double data entry, so you wouldn't have to use that interface that I just showed you. You would work within the Home Inspector Pro software from beginning to end, and avoid having...
You would still use the training, but you wouldn't use the thing he's about to show you.
Right.
Right?
Right. That's what happens when I try to do two things at the same time.
It's okay.
So you can do the data entry that I'm about to show you here. You would not have to go here to do it. If you're not using Home Inspector Pro, or we're still working to get a lot of the other softwares aligned, and I got to talk to one at the InterNACHI conference this week, and I have every intent to contact the others as quickly as I can and get them on board as well. So the first thing you're going to do in the tool itself is enter the address. It's going to come up and ask you, is that really the address you want to use? We want to use the corrected address as much as we can. So if you've got a choice between what you entered and a corrected, and they're pretty much the same, please choose the corrected. If they're just absolutely wrong and you know you have the right one, and there are those instances, then choose as entered and move on. But we can only do matches through addresses, so we need those to be as consistent as possible. So we're going to enter, and I'm actually not going to go through each one of these. We're going to speed this up just a little bit better than we did last time. So we're going to enter things like the date, when the house was built, the number of bedrooms, how many stories. All these are drop downs, so they're fairly easy to just pick the value that's appropriate. You will have to enter the conditioned floor area. Now, I do want to show you one other thing, so I better enter some values here.
And the training will explain to you what we consider conditioned floor area, which will be different than what you'd find like on Zillow or even on the MLS or where else you'd find it, because we have a specific definition for what is conditioned.
Yeah, you will actually measure the house.
Yeah, you have to measure the house. And one more thing, you might have seen that it said blower door test there. If for some reason, which I imagine you guys are not doing a blower door test, if somebody was doing one, they could enter the value in there, but you are not required to do it. You would just say, didn't do one, and then we would come up with a value based on a lot of other empirical information that we have. And we did
So
sensitivity analysis. Sorry, go ahead.
When you finish when you complete a page, you'll see this green check mark. So you know when you got 5 check marks at the end, you've successfully filled out all of the data. We'll enter the floor area. This is not the same thing as a conditioned floor area. This is the area, the bottom level of the house. We have the same information. I'm sorry, that's the roof. Here's the floor. So we'd enter the roof or ceiling area if you've got an unconditioned attic. Again, as you saw in the sim, we're going to characterize the roof, the attic type, its insulation levels. We're going to do the same thing with the foundation. We're going to choose the foundation type, what its insulation level is, and if your foundation is conditioned, then you're going to choose the appropriate insulation levels. On the walls, first thing is it a townhouse or a duplex? If it is, then you're going to select where in the row it is, whether on the left side, the right side, or in the middle. That will drive some of your answers for the walls. If the construction is the same on all sides, you only have to enter the data once. And here we're just looking for the frame type. You got to choose one. What the exterior finish is, and what the insulation value is. Again, we give you information in the training about what to do. If you can't see it, we don't expect you to drill holes in walls and things like that to come up with the insulation values. If worst comes to worst, you'll use the information you know about the housing stock in your area and any energy codes or common practice at the time the house was built. Skylights, if you have them, then there's information to be entered there, but it's basically the same as the windows, so we'll cover it here. So you'll enter the window areas on each side of the house. We do not expect you to measure the windows. You know, a 3x5 from a 4x6, that's all we really need. Estimate the sizes, combine them for each side, and enter the information here. Again, much like the walls, if the windows are the same on each side, then you only have to enter the data once. If they're different, then you'll have to enter it for each side. If you actually have the U value and the SHGC values, you can enter those. Usually that's only if the windows have just been replaced and they still have the sticker on them. So typically we're going to characterize it based on the number of panes of glass, the framing type, and the glazing type. And again, the simulation shows you how to go through and determine all of these things. And of course, most of it you already do anyway. We can accept up to 2 HVAC systems. You're going to characterize how much of the house is served by each one. If you only have one, then obviously it's going to be 100%. The furnace type. We encourage you and give you the tools to come up with the efficiency values. You can use the install date, but it's not necessarily a good idea, and is especially a bad idea if the equipment is high efficiency, because it's going to badly penalize it if you use the install dates, because it does use an average. We're going to characterize the ducts, how much of them is in each space, are they insulated and sealed, and the last step is the water heater. And again, we encourage that you use the efficiency. Now this is going to, and then the last step, next to the last step, is to review what you've done. And it is worthwhile to spend the time to look at this and make sure the values are what you thought you entered. Those drop downs, sometimes you miss the one you thought you hit. As you can see, when things are not right, it's going to tell you this. You can shortcut back to that page in order to do the entry. And then the last step, when you got everything right, there's a button that comes up that says Generate Score, which will then do exactly that, and will provide you with that score that Joan showed you early in the presentation. So that's the tool. So if you don't have, if you're not using a third-party software, then you are going to use that interface in order to enter the data. If you are using a third-party tool that we call API compliant, that has indeed incorporated Home Energy Score as part of it, then you wouldn't have to use this interface. Maddie, I don't know how to give you control back. Can you just take it?
I will take it, yes.
Great. That was terrific. Glenn, let me know if you want to take any questions, or for me or for you.
I can answer you right. So I think I answered some of those along the way. As far as partners go, you can see the list on the homeenergyscore.gov website. ASHI and InterNACHI are both national partners, so as long as you're affiliated with both of those, you could work through them. Let's see. As I just showed you, there is online training available. It's free. The tool is free to use, but you do have to be qualified to use it. You have to go through the training. You have to pass the tests. Let's see. Solar, we don't include solar in the score right now. The next upgrade within the next few months will incorporate solar into the Home Energy Score. Let's see. As far as...
well, I'm going to go on. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Yep.
I was just going to keep going while you look at them, and then you can decide which ones to answer. So let's just keep going. We only have like 2 more slides. So if you're going out and scoring homes, we do have materials you can use. This is just a tiny bit of them, but what I was mentioning to you, that you can share with the homeowner or home buyer. You can use our logo It'll say you're an assessor. We have web banners. You can do what you want with this information. You don't have to use it, but you can customize it should you like to do that. Next slide. So this is a lot of words, but we will be, giving you this and posting it, and I think we're going to send you the slides too. So this is really step-by-step. If you decide you want to become a home energy score assessor, which we hope you will, you're going to contact ASHI or InterNACHI. There are the emails of the people you need to contact. And then that partner will tell us, okay, Jane Frank is now going to be wanting to become an assessor. We will then send that person instructions on how to take the 3D training and test. Once they pass the test, they'll automatically be given access to the scoring tool. They'll get an email telling them how to do that. It'll allow them to create a login and password, and that's how you get access to the scoring tool, either directly the one that Glenn showed you or indirectly through another software tool that's approved. And then you're going to figure out what you're doing next in terms of your local mentor, working that out. I'm not going to go into every detail there, and we obviously encourage you to stay engaged. You can always contact us. We do encourage you to contact your partner first. That said, if they can't answer your question, feel free to email us. The best way to email us is at assessor@sra.com. Glenn and Maddie work for SRA, and they're part of our Home Energy Score team. And with that, I'm going to see if there's more questions.
A lot of them have to do with the sim or the tool itself, so I'll just go through them real quick.
Okay.
So to get access to the training tool, you need to contact your partner, so through ASHI or InterNACHI or BPI. The MLS square footage is not okay to use. That typically is something different than the conditioned square footage. So you do need to measure the house. Radiant barrier is a choice in the attic. The program that InterNACHI has introduced, and that was probably 2+ years ago, is different. Talk with InterNACHI about what that is, but there is a difference between it and Home Energy Score. If the house has more,
but they're offering both now. Obviously, they offer whatever it was they're offering, but they're also offering Home Energy Score now.
If there are more than 2 HVAC systems, you can characterize the 2 biggest, or those that serve the largest portion of the house. Same with the water heater. You will either characterize sort of the average of the 2 if they use the same fuel. Although if not, then you'll have to characterize the largest one. The contact at ASHI is
It's Frank. It's Frank L. at ASHI.org. So it's Frank Lesh, but his email is frankl@ASHI.org. And for InterNACHI, it's Michelle at InterNACHI.org. Michelle with 2 L's.
The tool is only online. It cannot be downloaded.
We do have a form you can download if you want, and then you'd have to like handwrite all your answers and then go back and plug them in. It's our data collection form. It basically just covers everything that's on the tool.
To find a mentor, you'll work with your partner, so InterNACHI or whomever.
And I mean, it's going to take us a little while to get that rolling because obviously we need to develop that field of mentors that are out there, but I'm confident we can get that done quickly. Glenn is already scheduled, as I said, to do a lot of in-depth training with folks, so those folks will be ready to be your mentors soon. And it might be a little difficult for those of you if you're in a remote area. If you're in an area with a lot of other inspectors, it'll be easier.
As far as a mobile platform goes, you can use a tablet. It hasn't been optimized for that, so it's a little clunky, but it is possible. In all likelihood, you will not have to have a mentor every 50 homes. We're still working out what the requirement will be in the long term.
And I don't know, probably Inspector Pro you can use with a tablet. It's just our interface. It doesn't work beautifully with a tablet. But other tools obviously do if you're using a different one that's been approved.
There's a question about charging for this score. You're welcome to charge whatever the market will bear.
While Glenn's reading the questions, because I can't see them. Yeah, DOE tries to really play a role in making sure that there's good quality, reliable. You know, we focus a lot on the scoring tool and getting people trained so that they know what they're doing. We do not focus much on, you know, how you're actually, you know, what you want to charge, all that stuff, your interactions with your partner. Those are things that we do not get particularly involved in, or at all.
There's just one or two more I'll hit here. The question about basement being considered square footage if it's heated and cooled. So if there's a register or a radiator in the basement, then it would be considered conditioned square footage, and it would be included in that number. If not, then it wouldn't be. Once you become a home energy score assessor, as long as you stay active and create scores on a regular basis, then you will stay active. There's nothing more you will need to do. If you don't stay active, then you'll have to work through either an abbreviated training or the extended training, depending on how long you lapse.
It's kind of like a refresher if you, I don't know how many months it is, but if you haven't done one in a while.
We're working on getting our mentor stable filled up right now. It's there aren't a lot, but we're working on that.
And I think once we figure out where those of you who are signing up are located, we can try to focus on obviously the areas where there are more of you. And there's also BPI, which is the building. I just spaced on their name, but anyway, BPI, Building Performance Institute. Sorry. Yeah, and they can also do mentoring and QA. They do, you know, have a fee for it. So we're trying to give you other options that would be easier on your budget.
I think we've pretty much worked through the questions. We're starting to get some duplicates. As far as how do you become a mentor, talk with your partner. There's a question about how this compares to ResNet. I'll include that in the. It's kind of a long answer. I'll include that in the written responses we provide.
The basic idea is that this house, what we're scoring a house on is how much energy we expect it to use. So you should keep in mind that if you have a large home and a small home and everything else about it is equal, it's in the same location, same heating, cooling, hot water, same windows, all that stuff, the larger home is not going to score as well because there's a larger surface area. And so the heating and cooling requirements for that house will be more significant. That's not to say it will, you know, be a huge difference, but it will definitely be using more energy. HERS and ResNet is comparing you to code, to 2006 code. This is not, Home Energy Score is not a code compliance tool. It's not intended to be used that way. It won't do that. So we're not telling you how a house relates to code. It's really meant for existing homes.
There's a question here about working with the buyer and how to deal with the seller. I'm not a home inspector. I don't know how you do that. I don't know if it's jurisdictional.
What's the question?
Representing a potential buyer, does the seller of the home need to provide approval that a HE score evaluation be performed on their house? They may be apprehensive to have a poor score tagged to their home on public record.
Well, No, I mean, I think that if the public record part is still being worked out. If you go and score a house, it doesn't automatically become part of public record. In fact, we do have like a form that we encourage you to have signed by, well, in your case, it's a little different because you're probably working with the buyer. But when we have utilities go out and they're working with the homeowner, we encourage them to have them sign a disclosure form, or a release form, I should say, that would allow the score to be released at some point should there be a system to release it. DOE will not be releasing these scores to anyone except the assessors who score those houses and then the partners who are overseeing those assessors so they can do data review, et cetera. So just like you don't, I mean, I don't think you get anybody's permission to do the inspection or whatever. I would imagine whatever inspection you're doing, if you have permission to go in the house to do that, you have permission to do a home energy score. It's not going to become public automatically.
We have talked with realtors. We've talked with the National Association of Realtors. This is just an additional data point in all of the things that a potential buyer looks at while making a determination on whether to purchase a house. So whether it's granite countertops and stainless steel appliances, or the size of the house, or the number of bedrooms, or the amount of energy it uses, this is just an additional data point. Certainly we hope to encourage people to focus more on the energy efficiency, or making houses that are not so energy efficient more so. But as to whether it will be accepted by realtors, certainly early on it may be those houses that score high are and those that score low aren't. We're waiting to see how a lot of this still falls out.
And I can just say that in the Home Energy Information Accelerator, which I mentioned very, very briefly, where we have these different national partners, we also have 7 pilot locations around the country where the MLSs in those areas are working with efficiency programs, and they're deciding how this works for each area. So again, DOE is not involved in that kind of transaction because we're not, going to be releasing people's information, and that's why we don't collect any PII. We don't collect any personal information about anyone. So that, I mean, you have to tell us your names, but that's it. But in terms of the homeowner or home buyer, we don't collect any of that. But if you, I would say in the next year or so, it'll probably become clearer how those different locations are figuring out what they want to do. But it probably won't be the same everywhere. But some of them are setting up like databases that they could tap into, just like ResNet has their registry of homes that have HERS ratings. It's the same idea, that there might be a database that would have HERS ratings, that would have home energy scores, and it might have other information, if it was Energy Star or LEED or whatever, that they would centralize that into one location, and they're figuring out all the privacy issues related to that.
Joan, since we're at time, maybe we can wrap up with a bigger picture question that I saw, which was, could you go over again, maybe if you went over it again before, but what is the benefit to home inspectors to doing this?
Well, I think that, more and more we're finding that homeowners and buyers are going to be concerned about just the whole picture of what they're getting with a house. People want more information, and more information like, SEER values or SEER numbers are not going to necessarily tell people much. But this is something that, is proven out and tested by the U.S. Department of Energy. It's just like getting a miles per gallon sticker. I think that they're going to want, even if it's not going to be a determining factor necessarily, it's one more piece of information that can help them understand what their monthly costs are going to be. And I think you're in a great position to deliver that to that. Resource energy systems are a big part of that house. It's not necessarily the part they're looking at in terms of the appeal of, an exciting, new bedroom or whatever it is. But it is a very important part that's going to, just like you're going to tell them if you think their roof is going to need to be replaced in 5 years, they're going to want to know what's coming down the road and whether or not they should make some improvements that could make them more comfortable and save them money as well.
Great. And like Glenn said, we will follow up with the rest of your questions written form. We'll send those out to everybody who participated on the webinar today. So with that, I think that's it. Thank you everyone for joining this evening, and enjoy the rest of your night. Thanks, Joan and Glenn, for presenting.
Appreciate it. Thank you all. Bye-bye.